No, no. No. Come on.
Second.
Any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say
Aye.
Oh, come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have four miscellaneous zoning code text amendments. I'll just dive right in. I'm going to give a brief summary of each of the four. And if you would like to discuss them in greater detail, certainly can do so. The first amendment is to section 17.41. It concerns retaining walls. The text amendment is intended to clarify the minimum setback requirement for retaining walls and how that's calculated. Amendment number 2 concerns section 17.50 and more specifically fences. Clarifies the definition of a fence, the materials and types of fences allowed in residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, and agricultural zoning districts. Add specific definitions for temporary fences, exempt fences, and agricultural fences. All items that we have not had heretofore. And also it closes a whole loophole, if you will, in our code regarding retaining walls and berms in our commercial, industrial, institutional, agricultural districts. Third amendment concerns section 17.46 under signs. It clarifies what area of an electronic message board is used in the calculation of the maximum 40% sign area allowance. Monument signs. Finally, amendment number 4, we create section 17.59. It creates a new set of regulations for animal waste storage facilities. It's modeled after the Washington County ordinance recommended by County Land Conservationist Paul Sebo, who is here this evening. Administration and enforcement would be a coordinated effort with Washington County pursuant to a memo of understanding that board and the county would enter into. And the intention is to regulate the location, design, construction, installation, alteration, use and closure of animal waste storage facilities, the management of waste from these facilities to prevent water pollution and the spread of disease. With that, I would ask Paul if you want to come forward and just give us a few comments about the model ordinance and why it's important the Village of Germantown should adopt one.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. So the county adopted our first manure storage ordinance back in 1991 through state statute, but he's been around long enough and involved. It was a requirement as the county participated in a non-point priority watershed program, the Milwaukee River Watershed Program. From there, and even at that time, when a county adopts an ordinance, and there's only two exceptions that I'm aware of, is it only covers the unincorporated areas of the county. So it doesn't cover anything in the village cities and incorporated areas of town and stuff here. Never thought much about it over the years. And I wasn't in charge of the department when we adopted the first ordinance, but I was working for the county and I was doing a lot of planning and everything else for animal waste storage. But it was around that 2015, in the village of Richfield, there was a farm that was moving in down on the highway Q1, and they were going to have this large, basically dairy farm with a big tourist thing and a lot of animals and a lot of animal waste and everything else. So we started discussions with the village of Richfield saying, hey, maybe you got to consider adopting this, because not only does it regulate the construction of the storage facility, kind of like Jeff mentioned, but also the management of that waste, get it spread on the land according to agronomic principles. So around that same time, I kind of tuned in Jeff into kind of the same discussion. It's like, hey, maybe I don't know how to consider it. So through a lot of planning and stuff on that site, going up and down, and finally the whole thing kind of fell apart. Every now and then I circled back with Richfield and Germantown, and Jeff said, all right, I'm going to work this through the system, and recent contacts. He's like, all right, let's just get it scheduled and get it over with. That's why we're kind of here today. If there are any other questions, as we any of the details or anything else.
Paul, is there a particular size of facility that's exempt, type that's exempt from the regulation? Like if a farmer just has a small manure pile, or a resident who raises horses, if they have manure piles, is that exempt or is that covered by?
So a pile out in the field they're temporary, that's not regulated, but once you actually start to construct something for the storage, over, what does the code say, 450 cubic storage, then that construction of that facility is regulated.
Any other questions?
How would this affect, farmers that have been in the village for a long time moving? If they alter anything?
Yes, they would. Yeah. So they would have to get a permit through basically Washington County through the MOU that Jeff talked about earlier. There is a fee obviously for the permit. Again, we have the technical expertise in the office. So in 90% of the cases of all the permits that we issue, we're also the ones, technical assistance, technical guidance. Sometimes larger farms, they'll actually go out to a firm for that, and then we but really the hope and the goal is really work closely with these guys to be able to then talk about the management and make sure that they're spreading that according.
One last question.
Sure.
To your knowledge, there are a lot of existing facilities in the village of Germantown?
To my knowledge, there is none. I think you only have one dairy farm left in the village. But that also applies to horse operations. A couple horse operations in the county that have fairly sizable stacks that we on over the last couple of years. So we're in the process of working with them and working with the county to see if we can get that whether they go to a storage facility or actually, I know Leaster Soils is one, come to the farm, haul out the animal waste or haul out the horse waste, and then they compost that with their soil amendment. A lot of times it's just, all right, Leaster's going to show up on site more often. Have this large.
Bilashevsky.
We would, in fact, reach out to Paul and his department. In fact, I think it was a number of years ago, we did have one complaint about smell about a particular facility that was close proximity to a residential neighborhood. And we worked with Paul, and I think Paul worked with the property owner, and ultimately the owner was able to get a grant and improve their facility to a point where we have not had any further complaints. But other than that, no, we don't have any specific regulations in our zoning code or any other municipal code that really addresses this. It's sort of a gaping hole, and one might argue that we're fortunate that we only have one dairy farm left in the village, if that's being fortunate. Yes, we're a large community, but for all intents and purposes, many people believe a third of our village is rural and agricultural. But we'd be surprised to know that we only have one active dairy farm left. We would fall back on our public nuisance regulations. Yeah. Now, arguably, if it's not a nuisance, then we wouldn't treat it under the nuisance regulations.
So at that point, the concentration.
Groundwater or surface water. So if it did affect surface water, groundwater had the potential, you could call the DNR and DNR would come in, potentially issue a notice of discharge and make the person clean it up. There's nothing that oversees the regulations of the construction. If they were saying, okay, we're gonna store it and put a concrete floor down or just a gravel floor and walls and stuff that are, whether they're substantial enough to be able to hold the weight and stuff of manure. Yeah, that would all be in question.
So what about the farm that has like, I call it 4 or 6 horses and all they're doing is dragging it out in the woods? I mean, not that I know anybody that does that, but let's just say they're doing that. Does this regulate them in any way, or it only regulates them to the point of when they're creating a storage facility to hold it?
It regulates them to the point when they create that storage facility. So there are nuisance, there are water quality, impacts and stuff that we could rely on the Department of Natural Resources for that stacking and stuff that is already out there in the village. But if they're going to start to excavate a hole in the ground to store it, better contain it rather than just putting it on a pile. And I mean, for the most part, a lot of the horse operations, they use sawdust, so it is a very compostable material to be able to break down. But it's that, now that I've got this pile of compost material, can I easily get in there, pull it up and move it, or just...
Other questions? No other questions? Jeff, anything else to add?
No, other than the draft ordinance would go to the village board for final approval, along with the memo of understanding between Washington County and the village.
Okay. All right, then I'll open the public hearing by hereby stating a notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Village of Germantown Plan Commission at the Germantown Village Hall located on Mequon Road in Germantown on Monday, September 13th at 6:30 p.m. or later. The purpose of said hearing will be to hear any and all parties, their attorneys or agents for or against the petition filed by the Village of Germantown Community Development Department for the proposed text amendment to the following sections of the zoning code, chapter 17 of the Village of Germantown Municipal Code, 17.50 subsection 2 subparagraph F, 17.50 subsection 2 subparagraph H, and 17.41 subsection 6 regarding fences, hedges, and retaining walls in residential districts, 17.46 subsection 7 subparagraph H for regarding electronic message centers and signs, and 17.59 regarding animal waste storage facilities, which is a new code section. Is there anyone that wishes to come forward that is either in our audience or joining us via WebEx to speak for or against the amendments to the municipal codes as mentioned? Anyone wishing to come forward to speak for or against? One last time, is there anyone that wishes to come forward to speak for or against the recommended changes to the zoning codes as mentioned? All right. Then this public hearing is now closed. Commissioners?
Can I ask a question first of Planner Retzloff?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. As I was going through the text amendments, I have a question on the temporary fences. Do you have a definition for a limited period of time? Or is that kind of up to staff's discretion?
Well, we specify the definition with regard to a snow fence. Beyond that, it would sort of be up to discretion. A fence used to protect a construction site, the time frame would be variable. There's a particular excavation, they're in the midst of that, and the weather is such where they've got to stop and pick up another day. A temporary fence would probably be put up there for just a couple of days. So I didn't see a need for specific time frame attached, other than to say that it's intended to be up only for the amount of time necessary for the purpose of the fence.
Okay. I can't envision, or I can envision times when that might cause an issue, but I guess if you're comfortable with that language, that's fine with me.
Yeah, really the more important one is actually the snow fence. I mean, that's the one that's created some issues in the past with us, and the use of those for purposes that go beyond your typical winter season.
Mhm.
Sometimes they tend to become permanent installations.
Right. Thank you.
Commissioners? Motion? Dave's not here, so someone's got to jump on. Stuart?
Motion for the whole thing, or are we doing it?
However you'd like to break it. You can take it as the whole, or you can break it by sections.
I will move approval of the entire package.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Mr. Leshevsky?
Yeah, 5.6. Frankly, I don't understand the specific need for this and some of the other legalese, but apparently the village attorney does. He has reviewed this agreement and has found it to be acceptable in its current form, but I don't know, maybe Paul has some inclination as to specifically what constitutes a unique set of circumstances. I guess maybe it's rare, maybe not so rare that the village and the county are getting together and agreeing to work on a common issue.
I hope not.
I mean, Tony, the last part of that paragraph is mutually acknowledged that many of the provisions contained herein are unique unto themselves and should not be seen as a precedent for any future agreement between the county and other entities. I guess it's just calling out that we're in a unique circumstance, and as Paul pointed out, we're not necessarily equipped to handle this from a technical standpoint on our own, and the county is. So how about if we take advantage of that expertise?
Makes sense, because it is, yeah, it's unique. You don't normally see the kind of the village ceding to the county certain levels of, call it regulation. Certainly.
Further discussion? Or Mr. Williams, I'm sorry.
Couple of questions. So, first, Jeff, it's in 1750, section 263. It says by filing a request record below with. So are we saying file an appeal at time limit?
Okay, let me get my bearings here. That's under the fences.
Yeah, fences and easements, 6.3.
That's the effect of eliminating that.
If anyone doesn't agree with our decision, they can file an appeal at any point in days after the.
Well, the appeal provision there is specifically for the applicant.
But if so here it's saying that they have to file the appeal within 4.
Yes, that's the effect of, if you would prefer to put back in a time frame, we can certainly do that.
But it's the appeal only to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yes.
And usually that's within whatever time that the next meeting would be scheduled, which could be beyond a 14-day.
Says a request for filing a request.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Asking. I just wanted to clarify if we're opening it up where they can come back a year later.
Well, one of the reasons for taking this out is that in at least one past circumstance, staff actually tried to enforce the 14 days, and village attorney overruled and basically said, it's a reasonable amount of time, and if it went to the court, that they would acknowledge that and let them. It was like 65, almost 70 days. I can talk with the village attorney and ask him if specifically we should put in a particular time frame. 14 days is way too short.
Way too concerned that somebody. Second question. Down further after. I just noticed in the letter G that are we replacing that letter? Fences, retaining walls, culture districts.
No, it's just getting bumped down to H.
Down to H. Okay. Everything below that will get bumped down as well. Got it.
Further discussion?
On 17.46 and section 3, message boards, confused about the way a non-digital sign compared to how this is described. So when we talk about the surface area of the sign mounted on Take the whole structure as the dimension or just the display area?
The sign area definition is to essentially draw a rectangle around the outer limits of the message or the pictures or the combination of the
Okay.
like to come up with what the sign area is. And in the course of reviewing an application, got into a sort of a disagreement with a manufacturer over what constitutes the sign area on an electronic message center. And of course of reviewing that with them, the common terminology in the industry is active display area, and it's the outer limits of the pixels in the message center. And so that's what we're going to be using. That's the intention of this language change, to make it clear what part of the electronic message center actually is calculated or included in the calculation of the total sign area.
Well, this might be an odd way to look at it, but if the message board was then the sign, could it be? See what I mean? Looking at it wrong. So you got the thing you hang on the wall. Inside you've got. So
Right.
which one of those?
It's the interior portion of it. So yes, I mean, arguably somebody could create an electronic message board
Yeah.
that is twice as big in the framework than is the display area.
Feel comfortable with that, that's fine. I just want to.
I feel comfortable with this language in making it clearer for purposes of the sign companies understanding what it is that we're trying to use.
Reality, they're not going to want to do my description, I don't think. Costs quite a bit. For the sake of argument.
Right.
Further discussion on the motion to approve? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item, I'd like to make a motion to move item E up as the next item for discussion under new business. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to move item E as the next item? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That then takes us to item E, Chad and Jennifer Ponchak, property owners located at West 146, North 10881 Heritage Parkway, a zoning permit to allow a fence and a drainage easement. Give us more information on this new business item. I'll turn the meeting again over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ponchak's property owners are seeking approval to install a fence, residential fence, in a drainage easement on their single-family residential lot in the Heritage Parkway, the High Point subdivision on Heritage Parkway. The property is owned RS4, as is all the residential lots around it. On this diagram, you can see on the back or rear property line, highlighted in yellow, is a 20-foot wide private drainage easement that straddles the common property line between the two lots. The proposal is to install 4-foot high metal picket fence, similar to the one in the photo on the screen, in both the side and the rear yards to enclose the entire yard area for purposes of containing pets. The fence is proposed within that easement along the rear west property line. From previous circumstances like this, you may recall that Section 17.50 provides for fences and drainage easements at the discretion of the Plan Commission, with evidence that that after considering the proposed location, the design, and the materials of the proposed fence, the fence will not materially interfere with drainage flow within the easement. 2, in the case of a subdivision, homeowner association consent to the encroachment, or if not, in a subdivision, or if there's no homeowners association, the agent landowners provide written consent. In this case, the metal picket style fencing will not necessarily interfere with drainage flow. The bottom is intended to be set 3 to 4 inches above the finished grade. And given the nature of the design, clearly water can flow through generally unimpeded, both before and after the fence installation. There is no homeowners association, at least not an active one that we're aware of. The landowners adjacent to the property have provided a written consent. We do have copies of those documents available for the 3 property owners that abut Conshock's property. I hope I'm pronouncing that. Apologize if I'm not. The staff recommendation is to approve a zoning permit application to install a 4-foot high fence located within the 20-foot wide drainage easement on the rear lot of their property, subject to 2 conditions: responsibility of the homeowner to maintain a free flow of water within the drainage easement at all times. And if the fence needs to be removed in order to make improvements, the property owner, not the village or another property owner, shall be responsible for the costs.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Good.
Okay, motion made. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Nils?
Question, which way does the water flow currently?
From the bottom to the top, left, lower left to the upper right.
Along the rear property line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although the property owner, maybe the property owner should or could come forward and give some evidence or attest to whether or not water actually flows in the drainage easement and to what extent it does.
Sure, Mr. Ponchak.
The water does. Our property, though, is 3 feet to the west. So any water flow is already on the property because it sits. So we do not have water flowing property right now because of that elevation. It's not just our yard that sits higher, it's our neighbors directly side of us. Their yards also sit roughly higher. That would be very. So we do not have water.
Shesky, do you have?
It looks, if I read this overhead correctly, that drainage easement's been either bermed up or planted. That looks like there's evergreens in the drainage easement.
Yeah, I don't have pictures that were provided by the applicant in the PowerPoint, but in your packet,
Yeah.
there are a number of pictures that were taken of the property line, and it's heavily vegetated, wooded, if you will.
Yeah, I was looking at pick 4 looks like the rear, it's the back of your yard, correct? So it looks like somebody had already pretty much impeded the drainage easement.
Well, there is, I'm a new owner. Been there roughly a little over a month. Started this project, but in addition to sitting higher, if there was water flow, I know signature from going from our backyard down to theirs. Groupings also in there and washouts. So be possibly some water that flows. Seen significant downpour for, but someone in the past has put in rock. Escaping doesn't. So work has been done in the easement. I don't know by who. That we just became home.
This is kind of a comment that I just don't even know where they don't look at their title. They don't title. There it is, and there's kind of like there's a little spot here. Let's plant trees. So it's just whatever. It's an education issue, if anything.
Are those your bushes on the lot line? I mean, it appears to be, are you going to be removing them or just kind of going through them? Is that a tree over to the, is facing your house on the left boundary, upper?
Upper, yes, we,
That goes in, it'll go around those? Because it looks like the one is
It's
right
gonna
on the
go-
property line.
it's gonna go. That are like
And your neighbors on either side and behind are fine with and aware of the fence?
Yes. It's explaining the process of what. Especially. Not have to worry about a dog wandering into their yard, friendly or not.
Mhm.
They're very friendly, but value their privacy in their kids' play area.
Okay. All right, further discussion. Bill, could you pull your microphone a little closer and then also turn it on?
So to repeat, Chad, are you, you're aware of the two restrictions that the village has?
Yes.
All right, further discussion. No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
One opposed. Thank you, Mr. Ponchak, for coming. Appreciate it. All right, that then takes us to new business item B, Bryan Design Group LLC, agent for Goldendale Road, the Fourth LLC and LT LLC, property owner located at West 206, West 12880, Gatewood Court, site plan review for 172,488 square foot manufacturing facility. Again, I'll turn the meeting back over to Planner Retzloff. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
The proposed 172,000 square foot industrial building is the fourth building that Sam Dickman Realty is proposing to construct in the area. On screen, you can see the highlighted in red the location. To the north, the Illing Company building, and it's referred to as Dickman 3, immediately north of red highlighted parcel, and then Dickman 2, yeah, I got it right, maybe I'm confused, is not yet constructed, but it's in that space off to the left. This would be the fourth building, and thus it's referred to as Dickman 4, if you will, or the Murphy Project, Murphy being a code name for a particular corporation that apparently can't be named just yet. So the proposed building is on 14-acre parcel at the corner of Goldendale and Holy Hill Road in the Holy Hill Road Gateway corridor. The site would be accessed by way of Gateway Court, short cul-de-sac to the west. No access to Goldendale or Holy Hill Road directly. Two driveways off of Gateway Court would access the proposed site, serving 162 total parking stalls, 10 ADA compliant stalls, stormwater management, on-site storm sewer would drain to existing basins to the north and also to the west in front of the dielectric site. Landscaping, extensive site and foundation plantings on the property, including undulating berms along Goldendale Road and a portion of Holy Hill Road with extensive street trees as required or consistent with the village regulations. Lighting, wall and pole mounted exterior LED fixtures on the building. Building itself, again, 172,288 square feet with room for an additional 26,000 square feet of future expansion. This shows, this rendering shows the proposed building looking northwest from essentially above the Goldendale at Holy Hill Road intersection. The building would be occupied by a manufacturer of freeze-dried pet food for manufacturing, warehousing, and office space. The building itself would be comprised of insulated precast painted concrete wall panels, 38 to 42 feet in height. Wheels, a 3-color gray and brown tone color scheme on the all of the elevations. The precast painted concrete wall panels on the south, east, and the west elevations. The north elevation would have shown here, looking southwest from the northeast, so you can see the north elevation in the lower right of the diagram, would be comprised of a 30-foot high insulated metal wall panels. There is a 5-foot high parapet wall proposed around the perimeter of the building to provide screening for the roof-mounted HVAC units. Aluminum storefront window systems and glass entrances with painted steel frame sunshades along the south and east elevations, and along the west elevation, 12 elevated loading docks with loading trailer and parking area for circulation. Let's get back to see that here. This rendering looks from essentially the gateway court intersection. Scan through some other renderings here. Again, looking from the north to the south at the north elevation of the building. Bullendale Road is on the left. Building elevations, the scale might be too difficult to see here, but you have in your packet details of the elevations that are proposed. Landscaping, extensive landscaping along the perimeter of the site. Again, as I mentioned, in combination with berms along Goldendale Road, anywhere from 5 to 10 feet higher than the first floor building elevation and slightly higher than the parking lot elevation adjacent to it. So it should provide a good screening of the parking area, soften the view of the industrial building itself from the east. Some of the landscaping, I got some renderings in here that show a potential view at the time of planting. Top, 5-year-old trees in the middle, and 10-year maturity on the bottom. Again, this is looking from along Goldendale Road, southwesterly towards the building. As I mentioned, this is a roof plan that shows quite a few roof-mounted mechanicals. Again, parapet wall is proposed around the perimeter of the building to provide screening of those units. There are some sight line diagrams that have been included in the packet that show that the units are not visible from positions from the public street, Goldendale, Holy Hill, and even one from US 41. And that addresses a typical concern that we have with regard to roof-mounted mechanicals. The north elevation, as far as staff is concerned, has been touched up with some additional color scheme changes. Staff is recommending, however, that possibly taking some accent elements from the east elevation and applying them to the north elevation if possible. As I've showed in the north elevation rendering, there is some component of the east elevation building materials that turn the corner probably for 15 to 20 feet. But at that point, the insulated metal panel wall is the prevailing material all the way along the balance of the north elevation. Other staff concerns with regard to the roof plan, the sight lines show or assume a maximum height of 8 feet on the RTUs. If after the final design has been determined that the height is taller than 8 feet, staff is recommending that there be some additional analysis and possibly screening required, further screening of those units. Additional staff comments, there are some technical issues and plan corrections required by the village engineer and the Public Works Department. Those items have been submitted to the applicant. There have been revised plans generated, but we have not heard back yet final review by the village engineer. So those items are appearing as conditions of approval, subject to final review and approval by the village engineer. And some minor requirements for the fire and police department. With regard to the overall site and development plans, staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans submitted by Bryan Design Group for the proposed industrial building located on the Holy Hill Road Gateway Corridor, subject to 10 conditions. And if you like, we can go through those. But with that, I would also point out we have representatives from Dickman Realty, Bryan Design Group here this evening to respond to any questions, or if you have a presentation that you'd like to make. Yeah, that would be fine if you want to bring that forward.
Commissioners, any questions, comments, motions?
I'll move approval of the site development and building plans, subject to the following, the 10 conditions presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve. Mr. Williams, pull your microphone a little bit closer, please.
We have any idea what the intentions of the homeowner is located just next to the building is? I mean, I know a lot of the write-up centered on that we wanted this to be a centerpiece in the corner. It's still going to be a centerpiece in the corner if that person who owns that residential property there decides to sell that property?
Well, at this point, that particular property is not part of the industrial designation or zoning area for that area. It retains a residential zoning. I've had discussions with a few people interested in acquiring the property, a real estate agent representing the property, plans from or ideas from using it for a used car lot to a auto repair business, apparently in the detached accessory building on the property, which is only less than 3/4 of an acre. There's a lift, a hydraulic lift in the garage, so it lends itself to being used for auto or vehicle repair, machinery repair, what have you. But at this point, it's currently on the market, to my knowledge. Village has not made any attempt to acquire the property, nor has anybody associated with the industrial development in that area.
Further discussion. Mr. Leshevsky.
Given the nature of the use of the building, have we looked at all the potential ramifications of steam, noise, smell from hydration of the?
At this point, we have not been presented with those sorts of details of the operation, but from what I understand, it's the type of operation that doesn't necessarily generate that sort of negative impacts that would be covered under our performance standards in the zoning code. I don't know if somebody representing the owner can address that at this point.
Nothing vented into the atmosphere?
Brought samples. I don't bring my dog with me today, so, so is there any sort of a retail component at this facility, like those small little, no, okay.
There is not. Hippo is predominantly a marketing company. So DTC, so direct.
What sort of truck traffic do you expect?
We anticipate about 15 trucks a day.
And the operation itself, the number of employees that did you expect?
We're looking when we are
There's approximately 15,000 square feet of office space as well. Now, is this the only location for this particular?
It is. Because freeze-dried pet food is
Okay. So what name or sign will be on the building itself? Will it be Golden Hippo or something
it
else?
would be
Does the site allow for possible expansion?
Yeah, there was room on the site plan for an additional 26,000 square feet on the south end.
Opposite of the freezer?
Yes.
Employees are transported in or transferred in or additional new jobs? Employees for the facility, are they transferring some in like management and then looking for regular workers within the plant or? And proposed number? Okay. Turn your microphone on, Mr. Williams. Push it again, one more time, hold it. There you go.
There you go. All right, so you're bringing in all new equipment. This is not something that's been run before. Everything's going to be brand new.
yes.
You're not transferring the facilities either. Okay. But it's effectively more of a startup than a transfer.
Jeff, one of your recommendations was to add something to the north side, something you were looking at was on the east? Looking to add as a pattern or a bump out or?
Yeah, if you recall, when the first discussion that was held concerning this project was before the village board, and David Baum had some concerns that he raised about the appearance being relatively bland. And the response was that there's not a whole lot you can do with the insulated metal wall panels as far as hanging things on them, or maybe Dom can address that. And I don't know what can be done. I'm simply, what we're trying to do is, in this case, is repeat a concern and generate some discussion to see if the plan commission members agree that something more can or should be done. I think it's not,
So,
in this diagram, I think what's been done since is you've added a color change or a second color on the top, horizontal, the lighter color and the darker color on the bottom. Okay.
Took, and came up with additional elements to try to address the tie-in. Some of it involved, some of it additional that are shown right now. Doors, we supplemented dissecting between the two doors. So by the element that so at best if I just pass these around, this one is the specific same view. This is kind of a distance view that shows it's not big things.
So you're basically adding what you call a fin, sort of a freestanding wall feature coming out from or near where the two doorways are?
Correct, and those would be precast, which ties in with the south sides.
so when we're looking at this picture, we're looking at a berm. Do we know what the elevation is from the top to yours building, roughly?
It's elevated, specific
Okay, looking at the berm, and we're on the north side, and it seems that you have a significant amount of pines and spruce and whatnot in there, so not any deciduous except for maybe crab apples down there in that one left-hand corner or something similar to that. But after about 10 years, I think that's going to be a pretty high bank of trees to really cover that portion. And there'll be some breaks in there, but with the color patterns that you're proposing, it's fine. I mean, I don't see an expensive additional need there, just based off of breaking it with color, and what you've done with the landscaping, I think really helps a lot.
amicable to. My preference would be to just go with the two that we have. Additional painted on. Two.
The additional painted would be that darker horizontal piece that appears in the board that you're passing around.
Correct. And that's what's going on.
So you don't want to put out that vertical and horizontal that are by the doors, which almost kind of look like a windbreak type amenity?
Those we would keep. Say the additional ones that- This would be not.
Okay.
Paint is typically.
Where is that? Is that the?
That's on your drawings, the ones you have in your hand, Bill.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do see it on.
All right, well, board, that's part of your decision if you want to change or make an amendment to, or if just leave it as is. I think the motion that we have would leave it as is, correct?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, what's been presented on these additional boards is sufficient. I know the original concern sort of came from David Baum, and unfortunately, we don't have him here this evening to.
Did he see the landscaping that's being laid in there? I mean, you almost have two rows of spruce and
The
pine
road
in
that's
there.
closest to us, that's what's on the existing that we did. Germantown too. Row behind it. Originally, when we presented the landscape plan, trees fewer, so we had an additional 5 trees. Deciduous and made it all. So it's pretty, mentioned, it's pretty robust.
In 10 years, it's going to be a wall.
And it's gonna be a wall, which I kind of had that. Jeff shared before.
All right, so does the motion include the additional or not additional? Motion is without what they show here with the 2 additional, correct,
The
currently?
motion is essentially to add something and with that, I'm saying that's
That's sufficient.
satisfies the motion. So
Well,
if you want to adjust the condition number 2 to reflect, I don't know if there's a date on these render, something we can use for reference purposes.
up to the commissioners. How would you like to move forward? We have a motion to approve, and that would include what we saw here.
I personally don't think.
It breaks up the wall is what it was. I think what the intent of it was to, instead of having just 2, now you have 4, so it kind of mix it up a little bit more, but is it going to detract from its appearance on that side?
Well, I'd go either
More
way, but
functional.
I don't think
It's more, that whole side is more function based than it is aesthetic based to me because of what it is. And where it is on the north side and with how it's being, covered and shade, not shaded, but shielded by the pine trees, I think that thing's going to be fine. And if you ever wonder how that works, go look at Air Gas. They put a fair amount of pine trees in too, and drive by that today, and you don't even see the building. It's a similar situation with a higher berm.
This is, select the units on the screen right now.
That would need a motion to amend.
according to the pictures that we do.
All right, that you would remove 2 of the 4?
Yes.
That is your motion to amend? Motion made, we need a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. I don't need discussion, I think we pretty much had it. It doesn't, to me, it's not a deal breaker if it's there or if it isn't there. It already has, with the color scheme and the 2 that are there, to me, that's enough. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Back to the motion as amended. Further discussion. Mr. Lashewski.
Staff comments, page 3 of 6 under lighting. I know it looks like the wall packs are 22 feet high to the north, I think 22 feet high to the south. Just going back to some of the comments from the residents about the amount of light. Jeff, given the height of those lights, I know we have the cutoff. Would you see that? I mean, when I look at the landscaping section, you guys did a great job with that. But my sense is that you can be able to see those lights above the trees from the roads, both roads, from the north side, south side. It's cool white, so it's a very bright white. I thought we had like a limit to the height of the lights.
We do, and it's 25 feet,
It's 25 feet.
which is why we require the cutoff style fixture. So when they are upwards of 20 to 25 feet, that yes, you could see arguably the light source when you're standing on the property, but when you get off the property, you're just going to see the light cast down on the building or on the ground itself.
Well, I don't know. I'm looking
Not the
at,
glare of the light source itself.
I guess I'm looking at that light right above your head across the street, and that's probably 20 feet, and I can see the light. Is that the intent? You know what I mean? And that's not a pole. It's above a building or something. But anyhow, is that, again, given the amount of glare that we don't want the residents to see, at 22 feet, you're still going to see the light itself just by the angle.
Yeah,
Yes, but I
I
don't
mean,
know if
that's-
I've done the mathematics.
the 25 foot is the current guideline, and I believe it started before I arrived, and I support it. I think the lower you get, obviously the more fixtures and poles you're going to need in order to appropriately cover or light the area in question. I think it's a trade-off between shorter poles and shorter fixture types. I don't know what to tell you other than that is our guideline unless there's a reason we know that they can be lower than that.
Okay, so
22 feet, granted, mounted on the building is rather high.
So I guess let's just say 22 feet. We have leeway and we'll look out of place within this park to go with a warmer, lower K light fixture so it's not as bright and intense as it otherwise would be with the cool white. Something you guys could live with? Because that's one of the things we talked about is, 30 years ago, you use low pressure sodium or something. So, but today it's this glaring LED cool white, which is just, it's kind of harsh on the eyes at night.
It's clean. I mean, it's very white. It's like 1,000 Kelvin plus, so
It's clean, but it's, again, I walk around at night walking the dogs and it's like, man, people have these lights and it's like, wow, like a little bit of the sun inside those fixtures.
Just as a point of reference, we've used similar fixtures, if not the same.
So we would be out of character with this one.
that area, I think one light or 10 lights, you're gonna show a difference because before it used to be dark.
Oh, I know. I mean, that's,
So we try to
yeah.
minimize it to keep it to the property, but there's always some ambient, above a little bit, just because of the nature of light, but I've driven by the other ones there and it, if anything, it shows that it is, it's for safety reasons and for security reasons, it definitely does present itself, and fit that part of the need for safety and for security.
The information indicates that got motion sensors on the light fixtures, but you are intending to run 3 shifts. So you're going to need that safety, security type lighting.
Okay. Further discussion. Mr. Kimmler.
Just want to jump on the back of what Tony said. Those fixtures, when they're mounted to the building, though, they illuminate differently. Like they illuminate that entire wall on the building, and that's, I think, somewhat makes it look like so institutional. Not with this project here, but I mean, put them off the building, then they're more illuminating the ground and everything that needs to be illuminated, but not necessarily building visible from a mile away, which I don't know, white building up there, is that dielectric? I mean, that at night you can see from, I don't like the look of it. And I think you're illuminating more than you need to for security purposes. If you look at Speaker, south of this, they have very nice lighting. It's much more appropriate, I think. You're not lighting it up like a hospital or. Is it possible to put them on poles instead of putting them on the building and 22 feet and still get the effect that you want?
Just to follow to evenly distribute the concentration or a good portion of them are on the side, just the side. So from a functional standpoint, the best balance that we can.
Now you've got the wall packs on the east elevation are at 14 feet. Right.
But on the backside, we expect the things.
22's on the west side.
But you also have 22 on the south and the north. There aren't entrances on the south and the north.
South would be towards your,
Yeah. It's another,
right? But could help on the south. I think if you want to look at it, we'd be appreciated.
Also look at sensors and we get a certain time the lights are off. Because that shift is basically a small relative to the first and second shift.
Sure. Or
So between a cut off at a certain time, basically third shift, you turn the lights off and get
Jeff, can you pull up the south elevation? Just to,
You have access to your packet?
don't have it.
Zoom in on?
So are there any, that side of the building, the south side of the building is going to be used for anything really as far as employee? Put the fixtures at 14 feet on this side of the building, the appearance of the building overall? Okay.
put them at 14. It's your south.
Wall mounted, building mounted light fixtures, 14 feet.
That'd be your motion to amend? Okay, motion made. Do I have a second?
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Question. Do you also want the light sensors on them or motion sensors, or are you just looking for them to be lower?
Thinking of both. Didn't-
Take less time.
We'll add that in there. As part of my motion to, to the extent possible, to limit the amount of light.
Especially during the third shift would be where it would probably be most likely. Okay, is that all right with the second?
second's fine with that.
All right, discussion. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Back to the motion as amended, further discussion. No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Thank you for your input. And congratulations and welcome to the community. We appreciate it. Do you want your storyboards? All right, next item under new business is item C, MSI General Corporation, agent for DJN Family Limited Partnership, property owner and Enercon Industries Corporation, located at North 120, West 19349, Freistadt Road, site plan review for a 57,057 square foot building and parking lot expansion, phase 1 site improvements. Give us information and background on new business item C. I will turn the meeting once again over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've discussed as far back as June of this year, Enercon Industries and the property owner, Site General, is proposing a approximately 57,000 square foot building addition and parking lot expansion for the existing facility at the intersection of Freistadt and McCormick Drive in the Germantown Industrial Park. Back in June, the Plan Commission recommended approval. The village board did a CSM to expand the parcel size for the Entercon property. That was approved and laid the groundwork for the next submittal, which is site development and building plans for the building and parking lot expansion. Since that time, the property owner has received 2 separate approvals from the DNR regarding wetlands on the property. Wetlands highlighted or circled in blue along the east property line were deemed to be artificial and consequently exempt from regulation by the DNR. And the area, the wetland area, balloon on the stringish looking in the lower right, is a area approximately, I believe, 68,000 square feet. No, I'm sorry, 6,800 square feet. That received approval to fill under a general permit issued by DNR. So all the wetlands, blue and red is shown on the screen, have the ability to be filled and will be impacted in some way as part of the development project for the Entercon Industries property. Site plan, access and parking. McCormick Drive, there are 2 existing access driveways. The southernmost will be relocated further south to serve a large employee parking area. A total of 137 parking stalls will be parking area on the north side of the building and another separate area connected by a driveway along the east side of the building, that additional parking on the south. Stormwater management, on-site storm sewer will convey runoff to the existing regional basin to the east. It's shown in this diagram, it's referred to as the Waggle Pond. And as part of the project, as part of the grading, portions of that regional basin will be filled and a larger portion will be excavated to provide a net increase in stormwater capacity for the Waggle Pond. That is subject to some outstanding modeling analysis by the village engineer to confirm no impact on the hydrology, but everything as of last week looked good as far as that being acceptable, what's proposed. Landscaping is shown on the property, extensive landscaping around the perimeter, including a replacement of some street trees. The proposed phase 1 is to be accommodated in 2 subphases, if you will, as shown on the screen, a grading and drainage plan, areas that'll be excavated and prepped for the second subphase, the installation of pavement and the parking lots and the driveways on the property. Phase 2, the building addition itself is expected to be submitted as part of a subsequent site development building plan or revision, if you will, probably in October of this year. But as indicated in the application materials, given that we're approaching the end of the year, there's a tight time frame for beginning this project and started on the initial phase with the grading and pavement. Landscaping plans, the north side, a significant amount of landscaping. If you've been past the site, you'll see that the property owner pays particular attention to landscaping and maintenance. So the proposed landscape plan is quite extensive, will further the appearance of the property at that particular corner, entryway, if you will, into our industrial park. Staff comments. The areas subject to filling and excavation for the regional basin that are actually on the Entercon property currently are not subject to any easements. There should be some easements that are recorded to address that. And as part of the overall stormwater maintenance agreement, that they may be able to combine those, but staff is recommending that we get those within an easement regional basin is owned and maintained by the village of Germantown, so we'll want to have legal control over those components of it, serve our regional stormwater basin needs. Some standard conditions that will be addressed more specifically as part of phase 2 when the building plans are submitted. As I mentioned, there's some minor technical issues and plan corrections that are called for by the village engineer and director of public works in an August 25 memo. The most significant of which is the need to complete some modeling of the excavation and filling of the regional basin to ensure no negative impact on the hydrology. And with that, the staff recommendation is to recommend approval of the phase 1 site development plans for the building and parking lot expansion for Enercon Industries, subject to 7 conditions. I know we have representatives here from MSI. I don't know if you wanted to make additional comments or presentation or simply respond to questions. Just let us know how you want to do that. Do you have a specific presentation that you wanted to make or just respond? Okay. All right, so Eric, if you're there, if you have anything you want to add, just jump right in. Otherwise, as I mentioned, the staff report is to recommend approval with 7 conditions.
Okay. Ort?
I'll move approval subject to the 7 conditions.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. Okay, well, significant improvement, significant expansion. So again, appreciate the growth and willingness to stay in Germantown. You know, there's a lot of places you can go, but when companies start here and grow here, I really appreciate that choice. So thank you so much and congratulations. Any further discussion? All right, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unopposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming. Next item under new business is item D, Sundance Inc., agent for Taco Bell and Michael J. Schmitz, property owner located at North 96, West 17801, County Line Road, site plan review for redevelopment of the existing Taco Bell building and site. Again, turn the meeting over to Community Development Director Jeff Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier this year, we considered a proposal to relocate the Taco Bell. That proposal didn't come to fruition, and as a result, the owner operator of the Taco Bell restaurant, Sundance Inc., is proposing to stay at the same location but redevelop the site, clean off the existing building, reuse the existing foundation, construct a new retail building on the property. Property is approximately 1 acre in size, located on the south side of County Line Road, immediately north of the boundary with Menominee Falls. The Menominee River runs through the woods to the south of the property. Couple of photos, existing retail building here, and some street views showing the existing site. The panels behind you, Planning Commission members, show, including one of them shows the existing Taco Bell building and site. Others show other retail buildings in the neighborhood, and I assume somebody representing the owner is going to describe what those are intended to present for our benefit as we get later into the presentation. Site improvements, again, the intention is to demolish the existing retail building and replace it with a new 2,250 square foot facility. This graphic shows the proposed site plan, not a whole lot different as far as the existing conditions. No changes to the driveway entrances, the parking, circulation, the single Drive-through serve will remain, enhanced with landscaping around the site, around the building, along the perimeter adjacent to County Line Road. As you can see in these photos, over the years, which I had to go back a little bit, the original restaurant building was constructed in 1988. I don't know if it was a Taco Bell going back that far, but as you can see, the original, I don't have it on the screen, but the original plan that was approved had a significant amount of landscaping around the perimeter. And as you can see in the drawings over time, that those areas have been replaced with decorative stone pretty much everywhere where there used to be a tree or a shrub. New landscape plan that's been presented replaces that with landscaping, new plantings to add to the refreshing of the site, if you will, along with the building that's proposed. In addition to the parking, driveways, etc., the outside patio area on the east side of the building is intended to remain. New furniture would be added. However, we don't have any particular drawings that present or describe that at this point. Building improvements, again, 2,250 square foot single-story building with a sort of a tower sign feature, flat roof with parapet walls to hide roof-mounted mechanicals. The roof deck is about 14 feet in height, and the parapet walls go up to at least 20 feet, so there's a good 6 feet to hide the roof-mounted mechanicals in the structure and not visible from outside. The wall height is shown on these diagrams, ranges from 21 to 23 feet in height, with an additional what appears to be about 5 more feet for that tower feature with the Taco Bell on it. It's the northwest corner of the building, right side of the bottom of the drawing screen. Click through some more elevations. The materials include a horizontal lap siding and a vertical, what's called a vertical, not vertical, longboard V-groove siding. And maybe someone can come forward when I'm done here to go into more detail and point out where those materials are. But basically, the elements are going to be finished with siding material of 2 different types in a 3-color scheme that you can see here, a couple shades of gray, purple, and lighter brown. Let me go back and show the particular elevations. The bottom is the north elevation, which would be facing County Line Road. The top of this 2-picture slide shows the easternmost elevation facing the Burger King, but we're looking at essentially from County Line Road, looking down to the southwest. This elevation is the west elevation that you would be seeing from traveling eastbound on County Line Road or from the parking area internal to the site. This is that northwest corner of the building, looking from County Line Road into the site towards that tower. Staff comments, the exterior materials, as I mentioned, lap siding and longboard aluminum siding. You know, it's a dramatic improvement from what we saw earlier this year on the other proposal, the other site. And I do have some of those renderings if you wanted to look to compare. But still, staff feels that there should be some component of at least some masonry round or component or element to the structure. I know that the pictures behind you of the other retail stores in the neighborhood are all very similar in terms of their contemporary design. But the one thing you'll notice on all of them, there is some component of either brick, masonry, as either a wainscoting or a particular wall elevation. So staff is suggesting that maybe feature similar to that being added to the materials and the architecture. Another comment, if you visit the site, you'll notice that the exterior lighting fixtures and poles are quite old. I don't know how old poles are, but they're kind of, some of them are tipping, and thaw the concrete structures. So staff is recommending that those be replaced, but not as a requirement of the approval. It's more of a, they should be replaced if you're going to refresh the whole site. Take a look at the lighting and at least maybe replace the fixtures with some cutoff LED type fixtures as opposed to the appear to be metal halide flood style lights pointing down on the site. A couple other comments. The landscape plan was submitted a little late last week, so we don't have comments from the village forester. So that plan will need to be signed off by him before final approval is granted. Wastewater and water utilities have some comments. Water utility, they couldn't locate a water shutoff valve to the original building, so they're asking that the owner work with staff to identify the location of that before they demolish the building, and to replace it with a functional water shutoff valve if necessary. And the wastewater utility is indicating that the sampling manhole needs to be reconstructed and the grease traps need to be replaced with appropriately sized traps for the type of operation. With that, the staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans for redevelopment of the existing Taco Bell on County Line Road, subject to 9 conditions. And again, representatives for the owner are here and can respond to questions, or he could point out the architecture materials.
Can you put this 9 conditions up? Mr. Reed,
I don't have them in a slide,
okay.
but I can read through them if you like.
Is one of them to require masonry?
Yes.
Okay. Masonry on part of the building.
Let me find it.
Yeah, it's
Number
appears to be
9.
condition number 9.
Okay. Sir? Welcome.
Some of the pictures that we had brought and displayed there, just to kind of show the flavor of that area. And there have been some developments in that area, say refreshed, similar to attempting to do today. As far as providing masonry to the saying the tower element, some masonry to that. Lots of interest to that. As far as the longboard itself is it's an aluminum siding panel. However, the image that's on it will give it a rich wood look. So there's, trying to capture, again, a very contemporary look, similar to what is in that neighborhood. I'll also bring in a nice warm, provide a very attractive. That I'm willing to.
Yeah, Dean, could you point out on this diagram where the longboard siding would be? And when you say the image that will be on it, so there's going to be some sort of it's aluminum base, and then there's is it painted, or is it a vinyl covering of some sort, or?
It's actually in finish onto it.
Okay.
I provided a photograph of what that material is. inexpensive material. We actually have it on this building. It's a very good material. It's a very cycle. Location of that we're intending to put the longboard be the light tan. Say between the tower and this feature, that would be
Okay, and just a little bit on the west side,
correct.
but on the east.
Side, yes.
And the masonry component you're suggesting would go how far up on that corner?
I think it would be
All the
change
way?
that material from siding to
I think it'd be nice. The highest tower.
The height all the way up to where you have the logo?
yes.
Okay.
Questions? Can you go back to the landscaping? And you had mentioned, of course, when you showed that other picture, there has been years of change along, what it probably was to what it is today. But my question would become, I'm sure that area is heavily salted and plowed over. What's going to change to keep what you're putting in there fresh from also dying back from heavy salt and probably, drifts or plenty of snow plowings pushed over onto the top of it? Because it is somewhat close to the road.
Yeah, it's a concern, which is in large measure why we're hopeful that the village forester will look at the type of material that's proposed and suggest if the items that are already proposed are not, he could suggest others that would be more appropriate given that particular location. But as you may recall, what we've tried to do with all of these sites as they're being refreshed is to get them to replace and upgrade their landscaping. The Burger King just to the east is a good example of a similar situation. Now, in that case, the grass median, if you will, between the parking stalls and the county line pavement is a little bit wider than what's available here. But there is some space between where the plantings will be located and the actual curb edge of the pavement.
Okay.
Our intent was with the plantings that we have to be as salt resistant as possible. It's obviously limited space that we have. Come up with a scheme that
Okay.
Obviously it's in the best interest to maintain the appearance here. I mean, we're spending considerable amount of landscaping obviously is going to be part of it. So we're
Okay. Next question I have is, do they feel that the majority, I mean, when I go by that place, there's always a line, especially when you get in the lunch hour and into the evening. So not so much at breakfast, and I'm not even sure if they serve breakfast anymore, but there's always a line, and not like a line of 2 or 3 cars, like a line of 10 or 12 or more cars. So a very successful business, which congratulations on that, because it does really well. Were there any thoughts of similar to what your competitor may have done on the other side with a 2-stage drive-through to help pattern that through a little bit quicker, or is it just not conducive to this site? I'm going to need you to come up though, because there are people watching and they'd like to hear the answer. I appreciate that. Thank you.
There is options to put a second drive-through. Just wanted to do right in order to. There are options: double drive-through window, traffic through for, add a second drive-through, the second drive-through lane.
Because that was going to be my next question. Do you feel, as we've seen the current fast food environment, A lot of the places were open, but drive-through only. I'm not even sure if you can get into the new McDonald's. Has anybody tried? I mean, for the last couple of months since they've put all the new amenities in, you couldn't get inside. So everything was drive-through business. So obviously that's kind of the way it's going, and with the next generation and with, different types of regulations or just awareness of COVID or whatever COVID concerns people have for themselves. The drive-through business seems to be growing, and the inside seating part, not so much, unless you want to bring the kids in and sit down and cool them off or something like that. But it seems like in that business, it's really pushing into the drive-through, call in, take your order on the mobile app or whatever, and then just pick it up.
And with, right, it is staffing. But in the same, stores, even with labor, when you
Well, it's strong commercial presence on TV, radio, everything. It's working. For the generation that really seems to be more targeted for, for what you offer and the services that you offer them. And then, is there been any thought? I mean, you're on the river, and it's not the most beautiful sight on the river, but it's there. To kind of enhance that in any way for outside seating. So during the summer, it could be kind of a draw or something that's just a more pleasant way to sit and enjoy your food.
it's definitely a tough time getting. But there is in the list or the that's an option as well.
So when you say it's an option, like you said, for the 2 drive-through lane configuration, is that a legitimate thing you're considering doing?
I don't think we were going to, but we were trying to get this past, this building. We just resigned. But we were trying.
Right. Okay, so is it something that we can expect in the future, possibly?
Yeah, obviously as things progress and they reopen the store, they have to reinvent traffic because obviously over the last year or so, changed considerably at this location. So as they change those traffic patterns and everything outside are going to have to look at. That becomes very challenging. Drive-through is currently how narrow that site is and a safe traffic pattern and place where they can.
Would you, and something I'm not in your business at all, and have a layman's understanding of it, but as you make the inside of the restaurant smaller, the parking isn't as big of a need because people aren't staying. They're coming in and they're going out. I mean, that's you see that constantly, especially at that site. There has been some traffic improvements along county line that have probably helped this in getting in and getting out. In where you can come in and with the traffic light and also the patterning of the other lights, it allows a more safe way to get in and out of that restaurant site. So that there has been some enhancements and improvements that have, I think, helped your business over the years. But I don't know what the current business program is as far as a refresh. Is it, here we're talking about 20-some years, almost 40 years, 80s?
88.
Yeah, so I'm sure that the cycle is a lot shorter now. I don't know if you gotta look at it again in 10 years, if you gotta look at it again in 12 years, I don't know, but I'm just trying to, as your business changes, just want to make sure that you can also accommodate it to continue your success.
As is. I think there's another thing that which isn't gonna cost outside person taking orders. That is another thing. Double lane or anything, just a matter of.
And I can see that as a benefit for probably my generation, but I think my kids and their kids going forward, it's all going to be on the phone. It's all going to be called in app accessible, and however you can get that food to them quickly as they come through, because in some cases, who knows, in the future, maybe they won't stop at all and you just kind of throw it in the window.
Locations on a day and right up, you're right about that came in.
Marketing's working.
We just want a nice, beautiful.
Okay.
Put on.
We appreciate the offer to add a brick to that tower facade. I think that would be a nice amenity, and it fulfills one of the requirements that the planner has put on as part of this approval. So thank you for that. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move the request to approve with the 9 conditions with 2 amendments. One is on 5B. We changed the word sever to severe, just add an E to the. Number 9, we would change the 3rd row. We'd delete the last 5, building to be less monotonous. Those 5 words, and we put tower feature.
In
Number 9, where it says
tower feature in
building to be less monotonous, I would strike building to be less monotonous and replace that with tower feature.
tower feature in masonry, or in,
It always says that.
okay,
Include additional brick or masonry features to enhance the character and appearance of the tower feature.
okay. That is your motion.
That's my motion.
Do we
Did
have
you
a s-
want to see, did you want that revised tower feature to come back to the plan commission?
Oh, no, I believe, seems like just looking around, people here were kind of comfortable with that being that brick facade, so I would strike that, Jeff. I don't know, it needs to be approved by you or?
You could just insert village planner instead of plan commission.
Sure.
Okay, village planner instead of plan commission.
I trust that they would put something that would accent the color combinations that they have already.
Have it in
Thank you. All right, motion made and seconded. Discussion. Kimmler.
Does the brick ever continue along the front, like halfway up the windows in any of the doors? No.
Yeah. It looks really.
Stone or stack stone.
Further discussion. Okay, good.
Would not.
Any further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming. Thank you and congratulations. We look forward to seeing the next phase. What's the turn time once they start taking it down? How fast? Okay, great. It could happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, next item then, since we've done item E already, would be item F. Josh Brown, agent for Blifford Germantown Holdings LLC, property owner of Blifford Lumber and Signs and Lines by Stretch, located at North 116, West 16474 Main Street, revised site plan and sign review applications. Again, we'll turn the meeting over to Director Retzloff.
All right, you may recall back in May of last year, 2020, the Plan Commission approved site plans for some modifications to the existing Blifford building located on Main Street. They got approval to enclose approximately 3,800 square feet, an area on the front of the building that was under roof, but open air. That has since been enclosed and made area and sales area. Also, they added an entrance tower with a front porch feature, and they added 12 parking spaces in front of the building that would be actually marked for customer traffic. Plan Commission conditionally approved the plans with a couple of things, including a requirement to remove the access gate that's off the main driveway into the site, to widen that to improve emergency vehicle accessibility. And a standard condition was that all signage be approved by the Plan Commission, all permanent signage. So the proposal today is to provide those details. As a result of expanding the driveway and widening that gate enclosure, Blifford installed some parking stalls on the west side of the driveway right away, and those items weren't included in the original approval. So we have a revised site plan that now shows those additional parking stalls, 15 stalls along the west side of the widened driveway. Fire chief has indicated that is satisfactory to him. The accessibility has been enhanced even with the parking stalls that are provided. So that's added to the site plan along with additional landscaping on either side of that main driveway into the site to provide some visual buffering or screening, if you will, from the adjacent residence on either side to the parking that's now proposed as part of that main driveway. Also, signage that's proposed. There's a just over 6 foot round diameter Blifford internally lit sign cabinet that will be mounted on the tower feature. That's shown in the graphic here. Blue, white will illuminate at night. And also a 1.5 by 5 foot panel above that with the word bomb marked. Bow marked. I'm not sure if I pronounce that properly. I assume that means lumber market or something to that effect. As an enhancement to the Main Street corridor and the Germantown heritage, I think it's a nice touch on the tower feature. And finally, relocating their post and panel sign to be code compliant. It'll have a masonry base, metal roof as shown in the diagram screen. So those are the items that are presented this evening for approval. Staff recommendation is to approve the proposed monument and wall signs, subject to one condition dealing with electrical permit, and to approve the revised site and landscape plans as shown, subject to 2 conditions.
Main Street.
Proposed ground-mounted monument sign and proposed. The one condition.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Nils?
Are there landscaping requirements for the monument sign?
Yes, and those are shown on the landscape plan.
Okay.
Just off to the lower right, sorry, lower left area, the landscape area west of the new parking
Where it
stalls.
says relocated sign?
Yeah. There's code compliant landscaping that'll be provided around the perimeter of the base.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item G, Community Development Department Architecture and Material Requirements for Residential Accessory Buildings under,
I only moved for the first section.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are
I
two.
thought you grouped it.
We'll move to approval of the site development landscape plans with the two conditions.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Now we can go to item G. Community Development Department Architecture and Material Requirements for Residential Accessory Buildings under Section 17.41, Subsection 2A for discussion. Planner Etzloff.
Thank you. This particular section of the zoning code was added back in 2018. It applies to all single-family residential zoning districts that typically do not come before the Plan Commission for any review. We don't have a architectural review board or anything like that that deals with residential structures. So those are items that typically go right to staff for a zoning permit and building permit approval. Section does require that in those single-family residential districts, that all detached accessory buildings greater than 160 square feet in area have similar architectural appearance and exterior materials as the dwelling. It also provides that the Plan Commission has the authority to waive that requirement and approve different architecture and/or materials.
Why?
In the last few months, we've had two requests by separate owners, Moss and Schutte, to waive that particular requirement as it applied to their proposed accessory buildings. One owner had a parcel 5 acres, slightly more than 5 acres in size, and the other had a parcel just over 10 acres in size, both of which are located in the RS1 single-family district. Both requests were to allow a large accessory building with metal wall panels and low-pitch metal roofs that were deemed to not be similar or the same as the materials and roof and architecture of the primary dwellings properties. Since that time, we've been asked by a village trustee to look into that particular requirement, possibly review and reconsider it, taking into account parcel size, distance to and visibility from neighboring properties, and any other factors that may be relevant to that requirement. Clearly, those two circumstances that we processed, the Moss and the Schutte ones, those requests to waive the requirement were really based on the notion that the size of the buildings that they wanted and that were allowed on 5+ acre parcels in the RS1 district, upwards of 1,800 to 2,400 square feet, are very large and likely very costly to construct with the same sort of architecture, roof pitch, and materials that were found on the dwellings. They also made the argument that the setback and or location on their particular properties would be far enough away from other properties where nobody would effectively be impacted by visually a metal pole building. And also that the large parcels in the A2 district, which in many cases you can't tell driving through the rural part of the village if a property is in an A2 or an RS1 district, even though they have a nice new single-family home on them. One district, you got to have accessory buildings that match the house, and the other district, the A2 district, you don't. So there seems to be kind of a gray area there that before, I'll use the phrase, it gets out of hand where we have every owner of a large lot with a home on it wanting to build an accessory building coming in for a waiver or a change on the architectural material requirement. It's probably best to maybe take a look at that if you feel you're so inclined, and to make whatever changes you feel are necessary or appropriate. So it's right now it's a discussion item. I'm to you for just that, for discussion purposes.
So you're looking to remove the requirement or create a condition that defines it more closely depending on what type of zoning it's in?
Well, I guess what I'm asking for is, does the Plan Commission feel it's appropriate to essentially do away with that particular requirement for the large lot residential zoning district? RS1 is the 5-acre district. RS2 is our 2-acre district. RS3 is our 1-acre district, so on. And right now, this requirement applies to all RS1 through RS7. Clearly, you get into the RS4 district, the 20,000 square foot lot, size of the building that's allowed, you're allowed one accessory building, upwards of 1% of the total area. So you're looking at, in some cases, no more than 800 to 1,200 square feet of accessory building, which is quite large, but constructing that to match the house with a steeper roof pitch, siding, masonry, it's a lot less expensive than it would be for a 2,400 square foot building on a large 10-acre parcel that's intended to house, I don't know, horses, machinery, boats, something of that nature. I mean, frankly, I think there's a number of ways you can look at it. From a value tax assessment side of the equation, building with better quality materials that match the home would reflect a higher value for the village. I don't know that that's necessarily a factor you should consider, but if it comes into play in determining whether or not obtain this sort of requirement for those sorts of parcels.
Similar.
Does the village require any sort of architectural considerations? If someone has a 5 or 10 acre lot and they want to build a house, building department, I mean, building departments say you have to have masonry or you have a certain type of siding or a certain pitch.
This is that requirement, and all it is a requirement that for a building over 160 square feet, that it have materials and architecture that are similar to the primary dwelling. Now, in many cases, like your neighborhood, for example, you probably have homeowners association covenants that require accessory buildings to meet a certain standard or not allow them. But there are plenty of properties in the village that aren't bound by those sorts of restrictions, like the two that we processed, the Moss and the Shooty one, back in June and July, August of this year. Freestanding parcels created by a certified survey map, probably many years ago, or quite honestly could be, just a year ago, where somebody can put up a dwelling on the property. They're not bound by any homeowners restrictions, and they want to put up a metal pole building.
Where I was going, it's if there's no restrictions on what your house has to look like, all this is saying is that your house has to look like your dwelling, your garage or your outbuilding has to look like your house.
When it's over a certain amount of
size, argument on taxes and stuff like that. The village really doesn't say that you have to have a certain type of size, certain pitch, more expensive building material.
No, they don't. The only thing we say is that you have to have a dwelling of a certain size. And generally, based on the number of bedrooms, it needs to be a minimum of 1,400 square.
Other ones are them set by the neighborhood or whatever development is occurring. They may have a limit on, the house has to be within a certain range of square feet, or the lower level has to be a certain number of square feet. I mean, it's, depending on the developer, it's different across several different neighborhoods. But in this instance, are you looking to just blanket out or try to make it more based off of a zoning type? So if you're in a zoning RS1 or an RS2, it wouldn't be such of a requirement to match, but if you're in a 4, 5, or 6, maybe it's because what you don't want is, or what some people would not like to see in a neighborhood of a 4 or 5, a zoning 4 or 5, is, some of the metal sheds that are available out there, either through Menards or Home Depot, or the plastic sheds that are out there. And they get bigger every year.
Right.
So you could easily get into that. And then you're looking out your back window one day, and all of a sudden there's this 160 square foot building back there, that still meets the setbacks and everything else that it needs to. And a good example of someone that has done that I can think of off the top of my head is on Pilgrim Road, right across from the church, Crossway Church or whatever. There was that newer house that went in, and they put in an outbuilding that isn't detached or isn't an attached garage, but it's a secondary building, and it's on the east side of Pilgrim, and it looks like the house, but it's not attached to it.
Right.
And it's definitely over 160 square feet. So
Mhm.
they're probably running an RS4 or 5 there. And I think that would still be a worthwhile requirement. But if you're in a rural area that you have a fair amount of property of 5 acres or more, or call it whatever you want, based on the zoning, and you have tree lines and different parts of your property that you can tuck these buildings back on, I'm more willing to waive that requirement based on what their need is, whether it be housing machinery or a collection or animals.
Right, and that's essentially what's being asked of the Plan Commission and staff, is to take a look at that particular requirement and make whatever changes you feel are appropriate or necessary. Like if collectively we agree that you shouldn't apply it in the 5-acre district, that anybody who owns a lot 5 acres or larger can put up any type of accessory building that they want to put up.
So,
Jan, I think you need to put it on mute.
oh, sorry.
Not a problem. Just so you're aware.
At least my microphone's working.
Yes, it is.
I mean, if I could expand on that just a little bit, I'm sorry to interrupt, Tony. I know you comment on that, but if we look at the two situations, some of the circumstances that were presented to us is, hey, I'm on a 5-acre lot and it's heavily wooded and nobody can see my building, which that argument in and of itself suggests that the owner knows that a metal pole building is not an attractive thing necessarily. Or maybe over time, like we found, at least historically, maybe construction these days, it's not a prevalent a problem, but old metal buildings, look old and rusty and metally and, not very attractive. So do you take that into account? Rewrite this rule to specifically say something like, if it's in a location on the property that's complete by vegetation, that you don't have to have the similar requirement. So at some point you get kind of arbitrary in how you're applying it. If
I'd rather go by a zoning type or size of lot than I would leave it to somebody's discretion of, I think it's heavily wooded. Well, I think it isn't because I can see it from that street, but not this one. I don't like gray. Mr. Leszewski.
I guess to add to what you were saying earlier, in that even with 5 acres, sometimes I think there's a tendency to say, I'm going to put my outbuilding as far back from my principal residence as they can. And sometimes it may be closer to your neighbor than it is to your property, depending on where your neighbor puts his or her home. So it makes it more troubling that, you know, like I said, you wake up and there's a shed on your property line with the proper setbacks, but again, not too far from your home. So that's the thing I struggle with is if you make it to the size of the property, again, depending on the layout and everything, it may not work for the neighbor. I don't know.
You know, it's not very often that it's never happened 15 plus years I've been here. We have created a subdivision by a plat or CSM, 5 or fewer lots, in a RS 3, 4, 5 to 7 district where there wasn't also a homeowners association created along with it, where there would be those private restrictions on accessory buildings that would govern whether you can or you can't, and then if you can, what it can look like and how big and that sort of thing. So it's typically in the RS2 and RS1, the 5 acre and the 2 acre districts that are lots are created by CSM that are, you know, by themselves, surrounded typically by other parcels that are vacant farmland, if you will, where one might argue, yeah, my lot is large enough, there's nobody around, I should be allowed to do this, and you might agree with that. The only problem I have with that necessarily is depending on where it's located, the land next door that's vacant and farmland could easily be that next subdivision that, you know, granted, that person was there first, so the subdivision has to figure out and work around it. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that would be qualifying thing in that regard. But
So this all, I mean, the top says adopted in 2000 applies to single-family residential zoning districts. So if somebody has an ag zoning, they can pretty much put whatever they want up, right? I mean, they're not under the same restriction.
we don't have the restrictions on the number or size of buildings. It pretty much the village over time has determined that if you have an ag parcel, which is currently 10 acres or more in size, have as many accessory buildings as you want necessarily. Look whatever you want to look like. Construct it whatever in building code.
So are you looking for recommendations from the plan commission because of those two variants that we've had over the last year or so? I mean, are we trying to make something for the minority, change something for what really is the minority instead of what is the majority?
Personally, I don't think we need to change it,
Okay,
but I've been asked to have the plan commission look at it.
all right.
I would agree that, so I was trying to figure out where you were going there. I don't see a need to change it. And I was thinking that was the direction you were going, but I wasn't sure.
Well,
I didn't have any problem with the two. I remember both of these. One of them, I remember the way the guy described it is you can't see the building from my house, which one that was.
right.
And I kind of understood that. I think I agreed with it. But if that's the only two, I think
The one on Main
I
Street,
think the way it's written now makes sense.
the guy,
No,
Main Street? Put his second garage in?
no, that wasn't one of them.
We didn't
They were out north. 10-acre parcel in Shooty and Moss was 5 acres and even.
Dennis, is this,
Didn't that one even include some neighbors commenting they didn't mind?
it might have,
It probably did, yeah.
is this something you're asking to bring forward, Dennis? Are you know, before you talk, you know where you gotta go.
Came up before, that's 2 months in July. So we're the last one that you will root. Terry's represents it. Brought it to my attention to look. So I started looking into the last property as such. Myself, I'm looking to change in regard to it.
Why was it put in there originally in the first place? Well, people coming by, looking at it, like, I know there's a particular property in Milwaukee, was veteran. And didn't have the same rules in the city of Milwaukee as such. Didn't, so he painted the house purple. Different colors, just. That's what you don't want to have, I would believe. So what we were trying to do in Jefferson, enough to kind of change this, I think your last paragraph that you have actually kind of takes care of this itself. Option, depending on what you hear.
Yeah, and I don't like the broad brush things, if it's gonna pigeonhole us into, well, this is your requirement, so we just gotta let it happen, kind of a thing, where right now you still have some say.
But that last paragraph gives you the option, have the chance to waive is in there.
I think that's as it is now.
That's what it is now. And that was added specifically, before there was some language that essentially said it has to be the same. And that was revised to be similar, because frankly, when it was the same, what we found, at least what I've discovered over the years and prior to my being head of the community development department, is former building inspectors in the building department weren't enforcing any of the same requirement, unless there was a homeowners association dictating that. So we revised it in a way that put everybody being treated equally and giving everybody the opportunity to come to the plan commission without having to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we created sort of an interim variance process, if you will, so that they don't have to go through that more lengthy, more expensive Board of Zoning Appeal process and prove that there's some sort of hardship. Here, it's a simple plan commission consideration of the circumstances, and you decide whether, it's a good idea or not. Which I think I thought was a reasonable middle ground. So that's why it is worded the way that it's worded, and it has that waiver provision, if you will, to take it to the plan commission.
Dennis, is it your thought or Terry's to remove it completely?
No. I like, Jeff and I have gone back and forth, devil advocate, such we kind of. I was trying to come up with something that if the property was enclosed, no, to answer your question, no. Trying to come up with something in regard to, as the last property was, that you had a chance to get a lot of trees. In fact, when I went to the house the first time, I went by it because I didn't. The first house was entirely different that you looked at. But the other thing that comes into play, because a lot of times the power lines out there, this areas. And the other one was, I was trying to ask Jeff, well, next house, not where the property ends. It's houses, if it was a certain amount of feet, as an example, or it might not be close, but it was far enough away from the other particular. That's what you were trying to do, I think, in the whole situation with this code. But like I say, I like Jeff's idea with that last particular. Takes care of that situation, but it keeps it in there. The other thing that Jeff had talked about was what about the consider those too, and same situation.
So these are your proposed amendments right here. The last two bullet points, or all three of those are amendments?
Just that language is already in there.
Okay.
So you're.
Well, it says proposed amendments, so I thought.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's what's confusing. So what you have is what you want our support to continue with.
Yes, there's right now it's a discussion item and it's not a proposed amendment.
Okay.
It's simply that
And that's what you
slide,
said.
and I apologize. I see now the error. That slide is just simply a presentation of, what's happened historically and what the code actually reads right now.
Okay.
So I'm not, again, with all due respect, I don't think that there's a need to make a change. Unless somewhere a couple years from now, we discover that we've had 25 property owners come to you all seeking the waiver
Right.
and all saying the same exact thing, that I'm on 5 acres and I'm hidden by trees. At some point, given that sort of level of consistency, you can sort of rest assured that maybe we change the code to reflect that. Right now, it may be premature since we've only handled 2.
Right.
But 2 in a row, 1 month after the other, kind of sort of suggests a pattern building here. And maybe we just wait and see how it plays out over time. But like I said, I don't see a need to I think it's premature to make a change if a change is needed at all.
I think the latitude that this commission would want in regards to those outbuildings as it stands. Okay. Okay, good.
Is there a fee? Come in front of the plan commission with your plan if you go to the building department, and secondly, what do you consider to be similar or different enough that it has to get to that point? So if you have a house that has like the high pitch roof and the masonry, and the garage has same siding, but maybe not all the masonry, similar.
Of the ones that we've seen, there's a continuum, right? A completely metal wall, metal roof building is a far cry from a horizontal, engineered sided 10-12 pitch, 30-year composite shingle dwelling. And that's what we've saw with the moss and the shooty ones that came before us earlier this year. I will admit that between myself and the building inspectors, we've been pretty lenient when it comes to, if the house has a 8-12 pitch and the accessory building has a 6-12, but the shingles are the same, we'll let it, we won't hold that up. If it's a vinyl siding on the house or engineered lap siding, composite material, cement siding, horizontal 4-inch reveal on the house, and it's aluminum or vinyl siding with a 4-inch reveal on the accessory building, we won't hold that up. I would consider that to be similar, but it's what I would say are the obvious dissimilar ones. It's all metal walls, all metal roof, compared to a new dwelling, or any dwelling for that matter, that has shingled roof and cedar siding or some similar material.
Chairman, one of the things on the last one was, and I had talked to building up. I said, how many times do you run a metal building, get asphalt?
Yeah.
But here again, the house is going to be, that was one of his problems. The other problem he had was the color aspect. To be able to get something close enough with it, take care of that particular situation. What was going to be. When I saw the first one being taken care of, my first impression I had, somebody did to you, you need to do the same to me. You can't treat me different. That's where you. I'm not an attorney, but I've seen enough of this. That is right. How often does this? But if somebody does homework, and that's why I like that aspect of that one word, waive.
Okay.
That makes a big difference.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Dennis. Anything else in regards to this new business item? No? You're clear?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, that takes care of all items under new business. Does anyone have any announcements to make? Not? We can be adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night.